Watch this and you'll never buy expensive paintbrush cleaners again. I'm going to show you how to turn this into this for free. Paintbrush cleaners are super expensive, they're extremely flammable, they smell terrible, and they also evaporate over time, so if your container's not airtight, you might come back to an old can and find it nearly empty and your money vanished into the air. So you can clean your paintbrushes at home without any solvents or other types of cleaners with just simply water and make your old crusty paintbrushes like new again. After years of spending hundreds of dollars on different cleaning solutions and solvents, I thought I would put on my thinking cap and find a way around this. So I decided to look up the melting point or the boiling point of most paints, and it turns out that water-based paints typically boil around the same temperature as water itself at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Oil-based paints have a little higher boiling point, but I have found something very interesting. If you boil the paintbrushes with oil-based paint on them, it still comes off in the boiling water at just 212 degrees with a little bit of agitation. You can Google this and you're going to see a lot of pushback, and people are going to say that you can't clean paintbrushes by boiling because you're going to damage them, you're going to melt the bristles, you're going to melt the core, which is made of epoxy, and you're going to damage it in some way. I disagree, and let's take a look at a more scientific method. So for those who say it can't be done and that you're going to ruin the paintbrush by putting it into boiling water, let's break it down and look at what paintbrushes are actually made of, and then let's take a look at the melting point of each of those components. What are the paintbrushes made out of? Bristles are typically made out of nylon, polyester, or animal hair. There's a metal band, a wooden handle, and an epoxy resin core that's behind the metal band and holding the bristles together. The melting point of nylon, different kinds of nylon melt at different temperatures, but the general melting point is around 500 degrees Fahrenheit. Polyester, also 482 to 500 degrees melting point. What is the melting point of animal hair, you might ask? I was curious as well, so I looked it up. The melting point of animal hair generally falls within the range of 428 degrees to 464 degrees Fahrenheit, with variations depending on the specific animal species and hair type. However, hair can melt as early as 392 degrees, which is still far above boiling water at 212 degrees. What is the melting point of the epoxy resin that's hidden behind the metal band around the paintbrush? And epoxy resin can melt or soften typically at around 240 degrees. So, can cleaning the paintbrushes with boiling water be done? Absolutely. Just pay attention to your materials, your temperatures, just like a good scientist would. Keep in mind that the resin core melts at the lowest temperature out of all the components of a paintbrush at around 240 degrees. So it's not a good idea to keep the water full blast, boiling nonstop, because it can soften the resin core. All you need to do to ensure that you don't melt the resin core is to dip the bristles and the handle in the piping hot water and avoid soaking the resin core for more than a few seconds at a time. That will get the paint on the outside hot enough to come off, but not allow the resin core to soften. I was able to achieve these amazing results with no cleaners whatsoever, just boiling water. I also noticed that the heat even straightened out a lot of the stray bristles that were bent or fraying, and it kind of like ironed them back into place. So if you ask me, don't listen to the critics, boil those brushes.